Why bloody hell do you work in wood?
Well, it's the connection, because I've been a tree surgeon for 35 years plus, and I also teach about trees. So I continue that profession on a part-time basis, and my other part-time basis is artwork, and it's predominantly sculpture.
So does your work directly relate to the work that you do when you're cutting down trees?
Well,
because I assume that's what you do as a tree surgeon, you cut down trees.
And we prune them. We don't jump. So it's a lot of physical work. So it's chainsaw work. And before I go on, I don't do owls made of chainsaw work. So it's more to do with the process and the material, and really thinking. The work really is thinking about civilization and material, and where those two join, basically in the past and in the future. That's quite deep, but we can go on from there.
So, but I mean, from what I know of your work, it's not always wood, is it? But
no.
You know, the idea that you're a wood craftsman is not could be a million miles away from that, can it?
Yeah.
Or it is a million miles away from that, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have worked in wood, but it's basically working with materials. So, and they're quite elemental. So that can be water, wood, stone, and also industrial materials like concrete. So I like to kind of fuse those so-called natural materials with industrial materials and look at what's going on there. So it's not.
It's got nothing to do with wood, is it?
Not really. I think so. I was confused about that question.
Yeah, I was a little bit. As I was asking, I was confused about it, actually.
I think it's just the fact that I've done tree.
Throw that one in.
It's a tree surgery element, really. That it's the. I suppose how it influences the work. It's not just wood. It's the influence of that physicality in the work. Let's put it that way, and balance and weight. Mass.
I think with your work, I mean, the ones that I really know and the ones I really remember, I'm trying to sort of dig myself out a bit of the hole here asking that question, is that they did relate to wood. They were forest-like installations.
There have been a couple with wood.
It's all right, Tina, I've got this.
There have been a couple with wood, yeah.
There have been.
Farley Farm Sculpture Park, Sculpture Gardens and Farley Farm House.
Yeah.
And also for Project Artworks.
Project Artworks.
And she was a curator of this one, and it was ages ago. But it was a little maquette of a forest scene.
That was the first piece I ever saw of yours. Yeah. First piece I ever saw of yours. So I think the assumption is because you're an horticulturist, you work in wood, but there is very little connection between your work and the work that you produce.
Thank you.
You're a very physical artist, aren't you? So last year you were part of Coastal Colours. Well, hey, tell us about it. Tell us about your experience.
Well, I suppose it was, it started off with a Woodland Skills workshop with Martin Brockman. I don't know if any of you know Martin Brockman, fantastic. He knows a hell of a lot of woodland skills. So we had this workshop for about 6-10 weeks or something like that. And within that we learned mallet making, fire making, clay, and out of that came brick making. And there was a little mould, and I did this little, and we got the clay from the actual woodland that we.
A wild clay, digging clay. Yeah.
So it was of the site, and when we made these bricks, I just thought, ooh, there's something really fundamentally very strong about that form and that the history of bricks, and actually just that tactile nature of clay and the history of how it's made. And possibly the future. So I'm always sort of going back and kind of almost reinventing the wheel sometimes about how I view material, just trying to go backwards in time. So from the workshop, I then got the idea of the bricks,
and
making something in the woodland and also something in the gallery. So we had two factors to it, the outside and the inside. So I started making the bricks with help from some of the people who were on the course, which was great. So they were volunteering to make the bricks.
It was a nice extension, wasn't it, to sort of make use of the people that you had. To make something en masse.
Yeah, and it was such a, and some of the people had mental health problems, so it was a brilliant experience. That experience itself, you know, people say, "Oh, tick the boxes for mental health," and it's often just tick, but that was a brilliant one where I saw this change in somebody, and they were really nervous at the start because we were doing something physical. And we were chatting all the time. It was absolutely brilliant. I said, don't worry about it, because she was really anxious at the beginning. Is that all right? Is that all right? And I said, don't worry. The worse it is, the better it is. So we were allowing for this sort of lovely mix of personality and form to just crumble and not perfection.
It was freeing, wasn't it?
It was
freeing up,
yeah. Freeing experience. So we made hundreds of bricks.
I think what was interesting for me is your work traditionally is looking at an area and looking at the natural sort of materials that can be found, whether they be sort of discarded echoes of what humans have left, or whether they're actually sort of natural occurring sort of things. So the idea that you taking clay from the woodlands and then using that was sort of a strong connection with what how you normally approach a project anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it was a new material for you, wasn't it? You hadn't used that.
Yeah.
You'd used wood before, but you hadn't used clay.
Clay. So I've used concrete before quite a lot, but this was the first time I've used a sort of natural material and I thought, right, how does this? And then the whole idea behind it was this material was going to collapse and go back into the landscape, so it wasn't an artwork that would be there forever. So that was a huge, one of the huge conceptual drives behind the work. It was towers and they were about that big, and it was part way between what you consider a building site, but also when you've got builders ready with their blocks, but also a kind of part ruin. So again, I was playing with time, and again, it's that thing about material, but it wasn't.
There's a sort of natural decay process which was continuing going, because obviously you were using raw clay, making those moulds up, not firing them, and they were just sort of dissolving, and you know, week on, week out, you know, we had to cover them up to protect them, to make sure that the rain didn't wash them away. And they're still there in the woodlands. They're still there, which is fascinating. I go up there, you know, once a week just to have a look. And actually, I've got someone going up there today, go and look at them and see what's left. So I'm a little bit nervous when people contact me and say, "Oh, we want to see Jim's sculpture in the woods," because I don't know how much is there. And I know where people come a long way to see sort of like the remains of a sculpture, and it's hard to make sense of it sometimes because they are just little mounds.
Yeah. Definitely.
And we've got this idea that in 100 years' time there'll just be these little grassy sort of mounds growing of what was left from Jim's time he spent there.
Just a trace. And one of the important things in the work is they contain seeds as well. So I even in the concrete I'll put seeds in, detritus, so there's an element of a future cycle that's going to happen. I don't know about the woodland because it's quite dark in there, but who knows? That is outside. It's a lovely thing about making such work is that the process and stuff is just outside of your agency. So the environment does it. And that's what I really like.
And there is absolutely no commercial value to that at all.
Absolutely.
So I'm inviting you back.
Absolutely no.
So you spoke about working with a community of people that had particular needs, but how does working within a community Because obviously you're working with a creative community. You're surrounded by creative people in Hastings and St Leonard's. How does that influence your work, do you think?
Well, I think hugely, because when I moved down here about 16 years ago from London, and there was an art community already here, and you realise that as artists we all have our different bents, we all have our different, and that's wonderful, and that's why we do it, and it's very supportive. You might not like something, but that's not the point. It's that general support you get from the community of creative people. That horrible word.
Well, yeah, but they do feed us, don't they? And they sort of keep us stimulated, and they create that energy around a piece of work, especially a piece of work as successful as that piece you did for us.
But it was inside as well. But I won't.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. So, look, I've got a question here, a really key question. I want you to be really, really honest with me. Okay. You might have to give me some thought.
I'm sure.
Who's your hero? Think about it.
That was an odd question.
Or who had the most influence on your career, do you think?
Well, out of it's a strange one, this, but I like Antonio Tapies. I like Goya. I don't know if you've seen the black paintings in the Prado. That's just like. So there's certain, but there's no real one hero. There's Francesca Woodman, black and white photography, absolutely brilliant. But the presence goes beyond the media. It's something about an artist who creates something that, wow, okay, there's something else here, and I love that challenge. But heroes, in a cliche sort of way, I thought, well, everybody, you see things in the street where someone's just done something. You think, oh, that's really good. That's fantastic. That's my hero for the day.
No, that's not right.
I think hero is somewhat celebrity, and I think it's we all do little heroic things. Hopefully, that's my kind of.
That's good. Yeah. Right. Well, thanks, Jim. And,